Welcome to Voice Notes with Taz, short reflections on voice, presence, and communication, because your voice is so much more than just sound. This is edition 4 of my weekly newsletter, and it's called When Anxiety Speaks. Now, anxiety has always lived close to me. Maybe you know that hum too, that familiar rhythm, that undertone of uneasiness, the quickened heartbeat, the shallow breath, the way your words race ahead of your thoughts. My life has often been filled with chaos and urgency. Growing up with a disability in an environment marked by emotional and mental abuse, and carrying the sting of bullying, anxiety became my companion. Now, it's a strange thing to say, isn't it? To call anxiety a friend in that way. But it's true. It stayed with me, loyal in its own way, whispering reminders of what I had already survived. And slowly, I began to see anxiety in a different way. Because it isn't always here to break us. Sometimes it is here to speak. Now, before we can even think about overcoming anxiety, we first need to understand it. Because understanding turns fear into familiarity. And familiarity allows compassion to step in. For me, anxiety feels like an old cassette tape, beaten and worn. Now, for those of you who know what a cassette tape is, great. For those of you who don't, you're going to have to Google it. Now, cassette tapes, beaten and worn, they often loop the same track over and over again. The brain plays it back again and again, convinced that this is the information that will keep us alive. But survival is not the same as living. Presence begins the moment we learn to press pause and decide to rewrite that track. So how does anxiety actually sound? What does it even sound like? In my experience, it shows up in the body first, and the voice usually follows. The breath shortens, the pitch rises, and the pace quickens. And suddenly, we're speaking from fight or flight, instead of from presence. Science tells the same story. When the amygdala senses threat, even an imagined one, the body's alarm system switches on. Cortisol and adrenaline flood the system. Muscles tighten, the jaw locks, and the voice usually starts to fail you, or so you think, because it isn't failing you. It's simply reporting what your nervous system is feeling. And anxiety doesn't live in the mind alone. It's a layered state. It can be shaped by history, biology, and even your hormones. Stress chemicals heighten urgency, while changes in the body can amplify sensitivity. Now, I'm not a doctor. These are simply reflections, not prescriptions. But I've learned that knowing anxiety is complex. And by knowing that it is complex, it really helps me to meet it with compassion, not shame. Still, for this space and for this voice note, I want to bring focus back to the voice. Because no matter the cause, anxiety always shows itself in how we are breathing, how we are showing up, and ultimately how we speak. And that's where the real power is held. So how do we begin to listen differently? How do we change and shift this perspective? Research shows that naming an emotion out loud reduces its intensity. Even quietly saying something like, "This is anxiety speaking," can shift activity in the brain from the fear center to the part that helps us think clearly again. And according to Dr. Porges Polyvagal Theory, the voice itself can soothe the body. Excuse me? A slower pace, a longer exhale, a softer tone can actually soothe your body. Now, isn't that cool? Why? Because it activates the vagus nerve and signal to your body that you are in fact safe here. And that's why a trembling voice can steady once you learn to reclaim your breath. It's one of the most powerful things I teach in my voice training, and I stand by it over and over again. It completely transforms the way in which you show up. Now let's do a small practice that often helps me when my anxiety speaks louder than I'd like it to. And it's the same one I've shared in today's download, the 4-step grounding process, a reflective space to help you meet anxiety with compassion and structure. Because I'm all about the structure. I'm all about taking control. If you find this next exercise interesting, remember that you can download the resource via the link below. Now you can pause here if you just need a moment to settle into your space and take a couple of deep breaths before we dive in. Now, step 1, I want you to notice. Pay attention. Is your breath shallow? Is your voice tight? Really notice your breath. Step 2, I want you to name it. Say it softly. For example, you can say, "This is my anxiety speaking. This is what it usually feels like. This is how I identify it. This is where I feel it in my body." Because awareness softens those edges, and awareness gives you power. Step 3, I want you to nurture it. Place a hand on your chest, and I want you to inhale gently. And then exhale a little longer. And then I want you to tell your body, we are okay. The final step, step number 4, I want you to choose. Choose one small intention. For example, you can choose to say, I'll slow my next sentence by half, because the mindfulness helps you to make those decisions. And by making those decisions, it activates your awareness. And I always say, one of the best things you can learn to do when you're learning how to communicate more effectively is to activate your awareness of yourself, your own communication, what your body is doing, and also how people are responding to you. Now you'll find the journaling space inside the download to explore how anxiety shows up in your voice, what your body is asking for, and what new intention you want to bring into your next moment of speaking. Now please remember, this doesn't erase anxiety, it gives it form. It turns chaos into presence. And that's the first building blocks we are taking towards becoming friends with our anxiety and truly listening when it speaks. Now, when anxiety does speak, it's not always here to sabotage you. Sometimes it's here to remind you of everything you've already survived. It's a signal, a murmur, a mark upon your energy. And I found that when I stop fighting it and I really start to listen to it, my voice softens, my presence steadies. Anxiety, of course, doesn't disappear, but it does transform from tremor to truth, from survival into expression. Because your anxiety is not the end of your voice. It's the beginning of learning to truly honor it. That's it for today. You're listening to Voice Notes with Taz. If this helped you, please share it and keep honoring your voice one breath at a time. I'll see you next time.